There's more than one way that we could approach this. We could be very surgical and create a mat just for inside Gary's mouth and lift that, or we could lift the overall black levels for this foreground. And I think that's going to be my strategy, because it seems to me like the areas inside here, the darkest areas in Medusa's hair and his toe and things like that, since there are several problem areas, let's just hit them all. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it right after all of my light adjustments. I'm just going to do a general overall color correction that lifts the blacks. So I'm going to use a grade node for that also, and we'll use the lift control, or either that or we could use the black point control, but I'm going to use lift. So I'm just going to lift all of the blacks by, I'm just going to lift them by this color, and then we'll adjust the amount. So I'm going to color pick the color that I want to lift them by, and then we'll adjust how much to do them by eye here. So I've gotten the color, I think, and I might have actually gotten the value just by luck as well. His mouth is a little bit brighter than this area there, but his mouth is also open and it's not as much in shadow, and his skin is rock color. So I might have gotten lucky in terms of getting the blacks in the right level. This area on his toe, it's bugging me still, and I know the reason why these toes aren't working, and that's because he didn't have proper holdouts. His claws should actually be digging into the ground a little bit here. So let's touch up his holdouts for his feet while we're at it. We could either do it before the pre-molt or after. I think I'm just going to do it after the pre-molt, and I'm going to cut out his feet. So I'm going to drop down a roto here, and we'll very quickly create, that toe looks like it's getting cropped right. This area here doesn't look like it is, so let's cut off some of the bottom of his feet where maybe he should be intersecting the ground just a little. And I'm going to be really sloppy about this because sometimes it's not worth overdoing it. So I'm going to take this roto and I'll put Gary outside of that roto. And remember, we have all of these controls for controlling the quality of the roto. So I'm going to go in and maybe blur up that roto just a bit. Here, I'm going to hide overlays by hitting Q, and we'll see what I need to do with the roto. Yeah, it looks like it needs to be softer. So I'm just going to overall feather the entire roto shape just a bit so that the edge quality matches the edge quality of Gary. I bring it back because I don't think I cut off the right thing here. There we go. And that helps. That's helping to take some of the curse off of Gary's feet intersection with the ground because of him not having the right holdout. Just a touch up. So the next order of business, now that we've gotten his blacks to pretty much match, let's double check that, make sure we're in the right place. Yeah, we've gotten his blacks to match well enough. They might need a little more blue, but we'll hit that in a second. Would be to go in and check his edge quality. Is he feeling the same blurriness as the background? And then also his noise quality. We certainly know that his grain does not match because he's almost pristinely smooth, whereas the background has all this noise in it. So let's get some noise on Gary here as well. For that, I'm going to use F-regrain. And I'm only going to do it to Gary. So I'm going to put it here. So this is the source, and the grain I'm going to pick up from the background. So I'm going to attach the grain pipe to the background. And I'll view the background. while I view the controls of F-regrain. And I need to pick from grain clip, and it will have me define the area that I would like to pick the noise I want to copy from. And to do this, you need to copy from a big flat sort of featureless area of the image. So I'm choosing this area of concrete here as my grain sample, hitting analyze, and F-regrain will now use that as the prototype noise to match the grain. So let's view the two together. I'm viewing Gary and my background, and I'm going to crank up the gain a little bit to see if I'm getting close in terms of my noise type. And it's looking like a similar kind of video-y noise. The best thing to do is to find an area of similar value. So fortunately for us, the concrete is a similar value to Gary, and the noise looks similar. One thing I'm noticing is that the noise is coming through the alpha channel everywhere. So I'm going to change my order of operations to do this before my pre-molt. So that the alpha channel will then cut off, when it does its pre-molt, it will cut off the grain that is being applied everywhere. The alpha will then nicely, during the pre-molt, will clip it all off. This isn't ideal because then the very edge pixels that are semi-transparent aren't being properly grained. If you want to be totally a perfectionist about it, you can then create another regrain node that will go and add a little bit more grain to those edge pixels, but oftentimes in a case like this, an approach like this will be adequate, especially if we have to do any more edge blur, which we're going to double check here to see how we're doing on edge blur. If you have to do more edge blur, you may need to definitely go in and re-blur or re-grain up the edges once you've edge blurred them. So let's look at where we are though first to see. It seems to me that the plate is roughly, the best place to view this is at a 1-to-1. The edge blur or the edge quality of Gary versus the background, here's 1-to-1, seems fairly close. Gary might be a little bit more sharp than the background, which means we could keep going further. Then there's another artifact I'm catching from the background, which is this glowy red fringe that's happening any place we're getting a speck hit. Gary does have a bit of a bright glint along the top because he's sort of a shiny stone material. It might be worth going ahead and emulating some of this. So let's try to create a system to emulate some of that edge, that specular artifact that we're seeing here.